Good morning everybody, it's Rebecca from Hedgerow Stitching. I'm so glad you could join me today for a little update on what I've been doing in my sewing room. I have some sewing, some quilting and knitting to share with you today. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying the spring weather. So the first thing I've got to share with you today is a project bag that I made out of a tea towel. I bought the tea towel from a museum, the Fitzwilliam, and it shows the Dorcas Haynes sampler, and I made it into a rectangular project bag and just folded it in half, and it has no lining. I found a grey zip for it, and I'm going to put my Dorcas Haynes sampler in here. I've not done much stitching on Dorcas Haynes for a long time, so this may help me get motivated for that. So that's my first bit of sewing that I've done. And then I started to use up some of my fat quarters of my French General fabric, and I made a slightly different shaped project bag this time. One fat quarter and then another fat quarter for the reverse. I used some interlining and found this lovely red zip that matched the fabric beautifully, and it's lined inside with this pretty floral, and then it's got a plain on the top and a plain in the back. So this was my last project bag. I've not got anything in it, but I'm sure I'll find something to put in this one. So they're my two bits of sewing. I've been doing a bit of quilting and knitting. So I've been working on an Irish chain quilt, which I've showed in my previous videos, and in between doing that I had some leftover blocks. So I made a super little dog quilt. These are just the blocks that I had left over, popped them together, put this lovely butterfly fabric on the reverse, which I think is French General, and I hand quilted this one. The only thing is, on some of them squares, I did mark with a washable pen, and you can still see a little bit of pen mark. I hand washed it, soaked it, and then I had to put it through the machine because the pen mark hadn't come out, and I think these will just fade now. I'm not going to wash it again. I quilted this with hand quilting cotton from Gutermann. I just had it in my stash. It was okay. It's not the sort of thread that I really like for hand quilting. I much prefer the thicker thread, like I did with my red and white quilt there. But it was fine. It's just a little scrap project that can go on my little doll's bed over there. Okay, so that was my other quilt. I've been really enjoying researching whole cloth quilts, and I have, on the train back from London the other day, I wrote a load of points and looked at a book that I was researching things from, and I thought I'd share those two books with you today. The first one, I've showed these before, but they are old books, but you can still get them. And the first one is Quilting by Avril Colby. And this is a Batsford book. And it just has some fantastic photographs of hand quilts from the 19th century, what they were lined with. There's another one there, because it is quite difficult to see the patterns in the books. And what I'm wanting to do with my own whole cloth quilt is create motifs that are special to our family and the area that we live in. And having done some research, there's very few quilted items that come from Devon and Cornwall, but there are a few in the books. The other book I looked at was Elizabeth Hake. She's done a lot of quilting books, and this is English Quilting Old and New, which is also Batsford. They must do a lot of stitching books, and they have similar patterns in here. I was particularly interested in the quilted petticoats, and they have some examples of Devon and Cornwall quilts. I think the Devon and Cornwall quilts, as opposed to the Welsh quilts, had a lot more flow in the designs, and the Welsh quilts are very, what would you call, maybe vertical patterns with the central motif, but the ones that tended to come from this area had more flow and more naturalistic designs in them. Oak leaves, flowers out of a basket, below. I am not an expert at all on quilts. I'm just taking from what I've been reading from these books. But if you're interested in, I think that was one of the patterns taken from a Devon quilted petticoat. But if you are interested in hand quilting, two of these books, they're fantastic. I've recently completed a green and white doll quilt. I'll put a picture of the pattern in here. Before I start to cut any fabric, I like to starch and iron my strips, and I don't wash them but just starch them. So this is the first fabric, a lovely mid-green with some red flowers, lovely green swirly pattern, gold. The next one is this more of a lime green colour, and it's more of a ditzy print, which will give some contrast to the larger print green ones. And then this beautiful wave fern pattern. Most of these fabrics are Marcus fabrics, and then I chose this tiny little ditzy leaf pattern and a little bit of a darker green to give some contrast. And the pinks, this colour. So I starch and iron my fabric strips, and this lovely vine, pretty pink. Another one with little leaves on it, and then this one which is a slightly, I would say, madder red, with some gold dots inside the leaves, so that will be a nice contrast to these paler pinks. And hopefully it will turn out very nicely. So they're the fabrics that I'm going to use for this quilt. This was my version. I used the half square triangle papers in this for the first time, and they came out really nicely. I machine quilted it, you can see on the back. And I've just got to find the binding for this one. I was going to use a dark pink, but I don't have enough, but I will find a binding for this, and that will be another little finish for my dog quilt collection. I'm getting quite a few now. Okay, what else? Quilting wise, I've also worked on Merry Little Christmas quilt, and I had shown in my previous video the tray of cut out fabrics. That took me quite a while to do, and then the kit that I bought didn't include the binding or the backing fabric, so I went on and bought the binding. And also the backing fabric, which is this Tea Towel Basics from Tilda, and it's called Waffle Plaid Red, Waffle Plaid Red. So that's the backing fabric, and I've managed to get a few of the blocks done. So in each design of fabrics there are 12 blocks, so I've done 7, I think, 7 or 8. So they're all the same but have a different centre, fussy cut centre. That was the first one I did with the nutcracker. So that's my little hanger of squares for the first row, and then you do various ones with the stripe, and then ones with the pretty fabric, and sew them all together. So I'm trying to do 2 or 3 of these a day so I can get through the quilt and maybe complete it by next Christmas. So that's my Christmas stitching. I also picked up a couple of bits and pieces haberdashery from one of the quilt shops, and I'll share those with you now. I picked up some stamp sets. I've always wanted to use stamp sets. I've ordered the ink pads and they're coming this week. And from the first one, I bought the 6-inch Alabama Star set. I've never used these before, and I've always wanted to try them. So I bought these. I got the hexagon log cabin. I bought the 5/8 hexagon and the little 1 1/4 inch thimble. And one that took my fancy were these super house prints. I've got the ideal fabric for one of these quilts, and then you've got the blocks. There's 2. One block you stamp out for the house, so your patterned fabric, main pattern fabric, and this one is the background, so you can stamp it out all at once. But I've got some super, I think it's the Devonstone collection. Is it that one? I'm not sure. That's fabulous that will be fabulous for this this quilt. Okay, I think the next thing to share with you is my hand quilting. A lot of you, thank you so much for leaving a comment, gave me advice about colours for hand quilting this quilt. And I'll put a photograph in here of the colours that I bought, and the actual one I picked eventually was the Aurifil 2625, and it's this grey. And from the photograph you can see that the 4 that I bought are all very similar, but this one, it looks really dark, but actually on the fabric it doesn't come across as that dark. So I have started to do some hand quilting, but you can't really see it very well. I've ordered some new needles to try. This one I'm using is the Tulip In-Betweens, number 10, my little Japanese ones that I ordered. But I've been watching Esther Miller online, and she has a series of hand quilting videos, and she recommends I think it's the Roxanne 11 needles. And I just wanted to try a different variety of needles to see what one suited me with my hand quilting. And I know it's practice, practice, practice. So that's what I'm doing in my hoop. I decided to put it in hoop this time just to see if I could get smaller stitches with this rather than holding it in my hand, because I felt holding it in my hand was quite a lot of quilt to hold. So I've got that in my hoop. I was in London at the weekend, and my husband and I went up to see the samurai exhibition at the British Museum, and we bought one of the exhibition books, and this is the book that we got. The exhibition is amazing if you are interested in the history of Japan and samurai, and this book is fantastic, showing all the costumes and these beautiful robes. So that was a bit of fun that we had at the weekend. While I was perusing the British Museum shop, I found some very sweet postcards, and they come in a little collection pocket of 10, and it was these ones, Mary Delaney. And she was around in 1700 to 1788, and she did a form of paper cutting or decoupage, and she did a lot of botanical illustrations, and that was the one that caught my eye on the cover. But she also did these other lovely ones, and I thought these would be really nice for inspiration for my whole cloth quilt. Anyway, that was a sweet little packet of postcards that you don't see unless you go to the British Museum. Moving on to knitting, I just have a little bit of knitting to share. I started the Petite Knit Novice Sweater, and I'm using double Sunday in a beige and a coordinating mohair. I'm knitting the size medium, and so far all I've done is that little bit. This is going to be the left shoulder. Sorry, it'll come down here. Left shoulder, you knit these up, and then you knit the back and join them together under the arms and knit in the round. It's really soft. It's really soft and a really lovely pattern to knit. At the weekend, my daughter ran the Barcelona Marathon, and she asked me to make her friends little coin purses so she could put little bits and pieces in, because they went over and supported her over there. And I'll put a picture of the process that I used to make the coin purses and a picture of the ones at the end. So that's what I've been sewing recently. Just a little short video from me today, and I will catch up with you again with a more in-depth video in a couple of weeks. So take care everybody, and happy stitching. Bye bye.